Hello, hello. Please write if you can hear us well.
Hey everyone.
Hello, hello. Can you confirm that you can hear us? It's our first time doing that, so
Yeah, I see someone confirmed.
cool.
Thanks everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Camille. Thank you for confirmation all. Yeah. So welcome at the first 3.0 Lab stream, and yeah, hopefully everything will work all right. But you are all software engineers, so probably you know that sometimes things doesn't work perfectly from the first time. But yeah, let's hope this time that it will work. All right. So you probably know that today we have the Watermill release party. So it happened some time ago, but we needed to prepare a bit for that stream. So that's why we have this delay. But I think that it will be still worth and it will be fun for all of us. And what we'll do today. So this is the plan for today. So at the beginning, I will go shortly through the all new Watermill features. Later, Miłosz will show you the new customer groups examples. Miłosz will also show you new experimental message bus component that will use generics. So, you are probably all waiting for that. I'm also waiting actually because, yeah, CQRS component is good, but we can have something better. After that long awaiting event-driven online training, we'll say a bit more soon. After that, Q&A, so you can ask us any questions, and at the end, you can win this Gopher mascot. Exactly this one. So yeah. So let's go. So Watermill 1.2 new features. So it took us a bit of time to release this version of Watermill, but I think that at the end we gathered some nice features that we were already using in production earlier. And after testing it for a longer time, you can also use that and be pretty sure that they are working properly. So the first feature that I think it's pretty commonly needed, so this is an event forwarder component. So if you work with an event-driven application, sometimes if it's not architected in a proper way, you can lose messages in some way. So for example, sometimes something was changed in the database, but event for that wasn't sent. And usually the problem is in case when, for example, the transaction to the database was committed, but the application was not able to emit the event. And usually the problem may be that, for example, service died, it lose the internet connection or something like that. But the problem may be also in the different direction. So you can have an event, but without changing the database. So it can happen when, for example, you are emitting an event in the middle of your database transaction, but this transaction is rolled back at the end. But event was already sent, so it's pretty problematic state because you rolled back the transaction that you were doing, but event is already there. And the solution for that problem is this component. So the idea is pretty simple. So instead of publishing events directly to PubSub, the idea is that we are publishing event to the database within the transaction, and later we are streaming this event from the database with Watermill. So to be super exact, so let's imagine that you are doing some transaction. So in this diagram, broker okay, it doesn't matter in this scenario, but let's imagine that, I don't know, you have event that you are booking a hotel room, but for some reason you are not able to book this room because it was booked already by somebody else. And in this case, if you emit this event within the transaction, if it will fail, this event will be not sent. And if it will succeed, so you will store the data in your database, and later Watermill can query for this event from your database. So for now, and it work with all the I would say database baked PubSub implementation. So for example, MySQL, Postgres, or Firestore. And we were actually using it with Firestore. So this was created with Firestore, but it works with any PubSub that we are supporting. And later, you're just using Forwarder to forward those messages to the normal PubSub. So this is the Forwarder component. More information, of course, in the documentation. You can find pretty detailed documentation how it can be used, all the context. So yeah, for details, you're welcome to visit Watermill.io. The second component is something a bit simpler, but it's also pretty useful. So sometimes you might have a situation when you have multiple topics and you would like to join this topic to one output topic. And yeah, this is what this fun-in component is doing. So I can imagine that it may be useful in situations when, for example, you have multiple topics and you would like to later stream this data to some data lake like BigQuery or Hadoop. And it may be pretty useful that you are providing a list of the topics that should be listed, and this will be dumped to this output topic. So this is this one. And also new supported PubSub. So I mentioned the Firestore already in context of event forwarder. So yeah, as I said, so we're using Firestore as our source of truth, and we were storing models there, but we were forwarding those events from Firestore to PubSub. So this is the first one. The second one is pretty fresh one because we added it just before release, and this is Redis. But this is not Redis list or whatever. It's Redis stream, as I remember, Miłosz?
Yeah, Redis stream.
Yeah, so it's Redis stream support, and we're experimenting actually with that recently, and this is actually pretty nice PubSub. So everybody who worked with Redis, you probably already know that this is a beast, and it can do probably more than it should do, but in general, you can do a lot with Redis, but it's also taking not a lot of resources, and a lot of clouds provide the hosted version. So this is very nice technology, but it didn't have implementation of I would say queuing, streaming PubSub earlier, but I don't actually remember. Maybe you know, Miłosz, when it was added to Redis. I guess that it was not that recently.
Yeah, I think it was 5.0, so like a year ago or 2 years ago.
Okay. So it's not like 1 month ago, but it's also not 5 or 10 years. But yeah, it's pretty nice thing because the chance that you have already in Redis in your infrastructure is pretty high. So it may make, for example, if you are not using any PubSub yet and you have Redis, you can already use that. So it may be pretty useful for that, because I know that in some components it's not that like, okay, I would like to have Kafka cluster and you can do it within 1 day. Of course, it doesn't work in this way. And yeah, with Redis, it should be pretty simple.
Yeah, it's very lightweight, so like easy on resources when you run it in Docker Compose, which is very nice.
Yeah, we checked that. I think in idle it was taking 10 megabytes of RAM or something like this. So, but it's beast written in C some time ago. Yeah, Redis, I recommend it. What else? I know that also a lot of people are using NITS. So we finally added the stream for support for Jetstream. Jetstream, this is the name of that feature. So this is also there. And if you are looking for some PubSub implementation for not maybe super production environments, but for some small projects, but you would like to have some persistence, we have BoltDB implementation also. So it's a bit better than, for example, Go channels, because with Go channels, the problem is that if you restart your applications, you may lose some messages. With BoltDB, I won't lose that, but small disclaimer is that BoltDB was deprecated some time ago, so it may be good for some pet projects, but not for production, please. All right, so this is about PubSubs examples. So we already have a ton of examples in Watermill, and one of those is server send events. And unfortunately, the fancy GIF that Miłosz created doesn't work. But please use your imagination, and let's please imagine that this wonderful application is animated. So if you use your imagination, so the idea is that Oh, okay, let's start with beginning. So what is server sent events? So usually when you would like to have some long-lived connection and listen for updates, a lot of people are using WebSockets. And when you are using WebSockets, you already know how wonderful technology it is. It's not always. So, but the good thing is that this is not the only way of how you can do that. So okay, you can have WebSocket for listening for updates, but you can also use server events, and it works pretty similarly. So you can open long-living HTTP connection, because this is working everything on top of on HTTP, and it can push you some updates. So the good thing is that it's based on HTTP, so it doesn't require any custom load balancer configuration like WebSockets or whatever, and it will also work with your load balancer out of the box, and it's more lightweight. So it's handling the reconnections better from my experience. In general, it's working nicely. And in Watermill, we added the component that is able to trigger updates of your endpoints based on events. One important thing. So you can. So how we're using it usually. So it was that we had the normal REST endpoint, like get I don't know, list of I don't know what.
Hot posts. Maybe it's an example.
Good idea. So for example, you can have an endpoint that it's returning you all the post lists, and it can be normal REST endpoint, but you can also start to, you can call this endpoint with a different header. I don't remember the name, to be honest.
Accept, I think. Yeah.
Accept, but I don't remember the value.
So usually you have accept application JSON, right? Which returns a single JSON payload. But I think if you change it to like text event stream, the endpoint just behaves differently. So you will first receive the JSON payload as usual, but then it will keep sending updates basically. So there's nothing special about this header itself, but this is how the plugin for Watermill HTTP works. So it makes it quite easy to use. Like you can use regular endpoints, but you can also switch to live updates if you want.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool when you're building an application that it's pretty important to keep it live. So for example, this is some blog post. So as I remember, it's not that important. But for example, we're building portal for operations where they would like to see updates of something in the real time. So it's actually pretty nice, because if you have event, and you can trigger with this event sending the updated content. So it's making the experience of user live. So probably I can spend 1 hour talking about that, but I will, of course, recommend you to check the examples, because I think we have this component for pretty long, but we didn't have example earlier. So yeah, if you're looking, so you know for what you are looking for, so you can now know that this example does exist. Another one. So exactly one delivery example. So it's, I would say, a bit controversial topic, but long story short, it's possible in some scenarios, but for really specific scenarios. So I will not go into the details, because this is pretty advanced and complex, but we have also example for that. So if you're interested in that topic, I would recommend you to go to examples. Sorry, it's probably a bit small for you. It's even pretty small for me, but the idea is that we also introduced in the documentation something that we named Watermill Awesome. And here we're listing the repositories that are not official Watermill repositories, but they are providing some useful tooling for some stuff. But it's sometimes maybe not production ready enough to include it to Watermill, or there are multiple reasons. Maybe with time we can do that if authors would like to move it, for example, to Watermill official repositories, but it really depends. But it's worth checking, especially some examples, some unofficial types of implementations, logging adapters, observability. So for example, I was using recently Open Consensus Open Consensus, I should say, probably, for Watermill from Czesław, I should say. From Grzegorz. I know Czesławo, and his name is Grzegorz, so it will be easier. And yeah. So yeah, if you're looking for some stuff, again, Watermill documentation, and you can find such repositories. If you have some repository that you think that should be there, I think, yeah, the documentation of Watermill is open source, so you can just submit PR. At the bottom of the documentation page, you can check, there is a link even to edit the page. So if you have anything to add there, feel free to do that. And yeah, as always, would like to send a huge thank you to all Watermill contributors, because without you, it wouldn't be as awesome as it is. A small apologize also for people that recently sent us some PRs, but we're preparing this live, so we're a bit busy. But I promise that we'll look on that soon. Especially that I've seen some of you already on the chat, so thank you.
Especially a big thanks for everyone who contributed to PubSub implementation, because actually all four that Robert mentioned were not created by us. We just helped with reviewing the code. So big thanks, and for everyone who would like to contribute, if you decide to move your implementation to our GitHub org, you will retain all right permissions, so you are still a maintainer of the repository. Yeah. Thanks.
All right, so I think it's time for the most risky part. So hopefully, the first rule of live coding, live presentations, don't do that, but we're always doing that because it's fun. So I think it's your turn.
Of course, it's not customer groups, it's consumer groups. Thanks for pointing that out on the chat. So there's a new example about consumer groups on GitHub repository of Watermill, next to other like those for service and events Robert mentioned. And it's live already there. So you can try it yourself. It's just one Docker compose you can spin up and see on your local environment. But I will walk you through it now, just to give you more context what's going on. So consumer groups are like a quite basic thing about PubSubs, but it so happens that we don't have much documentation about them anywhere on Watermill, I think, or it's just mentioned in a few examples. And the topic, was discussed in our Discord a few times, so I thought it would be easier to show it on like live examples in a visual way. So I have this beautiful Bootstrap UI, as usual, for our examples. And yeah, so the thing about consumer groups is they are related mostly to subscribers. And in general, if you consider PubSubs and Watermill implementation, the publishing part is usually much simpler, because there's a topic and there's a message or a single messages. And as much as the publisher is concerned, he just pushes the message on that topic and forgets about it. That's quite simple. But the other part, the subscribing part, when you decide who receives the message, is actually more complex. At least if you have an application that's more complicated than a single handler. So consumer groups is a tool that lets you do it, and some PubSubs do it in a bit different way. And consumer groups come from Kafka originally, like the term. And for example, Redis also uses this term, but Redis documentation mentions it comes from Kafka. So people just tend to use it. But some PubSubs, like Google Cloud PubSub or RabbitMQ, use a different primitives to do the same thing, like a topic and subscription or queue and exchange in AMQP case. The point is they do the same thing, right? So if you can grasp consumer groups, you should be able to do the same thing in other PubSubs easily. The example scenario here is, let's imagine we have any kind of web application, doesn't really matter, where we allow users to sign up So pretty much every web application, right? And then when a user signs up, there's a user signed up event published on a PubSub. Doesn't matter which one. In this example, we use Redis because the configuration is quite simple, so it's easier to show you what it's about. And yeah, so hopefully this is clear. So this box you can see called newsletter service 1 is a single replica of a service. Let's say a microservice, doesn't really matter. And the row below it is a handler, Watermill handler called onUser signed up. So every time a user is signed up on our web app, we want to add them to a newsletter service, subscribe them to a list. And we do it over an event, so it's not blocking. So the idea is I have a switch here that we start sending messages. So as you can see, the handler is waiting for messages now, but as soon as I flip it, I start publishing those events, and you can see how they start coming in. Right, so you can see there's a sequence. We receive events one after the other. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that this is not a purely UI simulation. Underneath, there's a Docker Compose with real services using Watermill. And the front end uses the servers and events that Robert described before.
So you can see multiple parts that I shown. So yeah, you need to trust that it's not just Bootstrap. But I think it's probably simpler to us to write advanced backend than advanced frontend because frontend is too complex for us.
Please don't review this HTML. You won't like it. Right, and so this is the code for the handler. If you know Watermill, if you used Watermill, it should be clear what's happening here. But just in case, the first argument is a handler name, which doesn't really matter that much. It's just Watermill will prevent you from adding two handlers of the same name. And the second argument is a topic, which in our case will always be just the name of the event. Right. So this is the publishing part, right? We publish all events on this topic, and then something happens.
Sorry, Miłosz, there is a question. Can you show DevTools maybe for?
Yeah, sure.
I thought that you would say, "Oh, they discovered that it's fake."
Right. So what you can see here is the publishing part, right? So the publishing is just, you can see it, right?
I guess. No.
Great. Okay, let me. I guess let me show my entire screen. Will be more fun this way. Okay. So once again, what you can see here are the publishing requests. So there's nothing fancy here. It's just a post request that publishes an event. Doesn't matter that much. And you won't see the SSE endpoint right now because it's already running. So
I think if you refresh,
refresh the page, and then there's something called messages. So as you can see, Chrome correctly discovered that this is an event stream. So it knows that it's not a regular endpoint, but an event stream type. And I can even show the headers, right? So you can see there's the accept header Robert mentioned before. It's set to text event stream. And the content type from the response is also a text event stream. And that's pretty much it. Like, there's nothing super complex about this. It's just a long-running HTTP request. So now when I start publishing messages, you should see them coming in there. So this is just a JSON. information what happened. And you will see those numbers attached to the topic. That's just because I needed a way to differentiate between chapters in the example. But this is implementation detail. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
So there's a question: are you using SSE to update content on the site?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. For example, imagine having a Twitter stream of tweets, right? Your wall of tweets, and then you could do something like when someone writes a new post, you will show up on the screen, automatically. And this is exactly what the SSE example shows. There's Twitter-like application that shows updating the wall, and you can update anything really. You can just every time a new event comes in, you can refresh the element.
Yeah, so also another example how we're using that was that let's imagine that you have endpoint like when you are getting one resource. So let's imagine that you are creating some page to see the reservation of the hotel, and there the reservation may update with time. So you have payment for that, some invoice may be issued, and some stuff like that. So let's imagine that you have endpoint that get reservation / ID of this reservation, and you can use SSE in that. You can just put the entire new object after when it's updated. So this is how we're using that. So we weren't doing in the way that you were putting partial updates. Wanted to keep front-end simple. So front-end, when he received the update, he was just replacing what was returned. So that's pretty cool because implementation is much easier. So in this case, in theory, can work without SSE. But when you have SSE, so when the new content is sent, you are just replacing everything, and the logic is super simple. The logic, so as I remember, in our case, it was the situation that we had the implementation without SSE at the beginning. Later, we added this header, and front-end guys were able just to switch header, handle updates, and instead of loading content once, just to replace everything. So
yeah,
that's making it.
And the great thing is, you can still keep using the same endpoint in a regular way, with no events. So it's like you don't block the other team. I think in general SSE is not appreciated enough or not known enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's quite obscure technology. Like people, I think, use WebSockets mostly, and it's been really great so far. Like for us.
It's going on our recommendation list. So our recommendation list from today: Redis, SSE, Watermill.
Yeah, and SSE works great with Watermill HTTP. So it's really great. Okay, coming back to the example, I was showing the code. Yeah, so the first argument is the handler name. The second one is the topic name, and we won't be dealing with those much today. They are just the same. I mean, handler name we will change, whatever. The third one is subscriber. In our case, it is already subscriber, as I mentioned. But this could be any Watermill subscriber. And then the handler function, which in this case just unmarshals the payload onto an event, and then checks some business logic, whatever, doesn't matter, and then simulates adding user to the promotion list. So of course, real implementation, we would have here like an HTTP call to the newsletter service, something like that. Probably like application command in our case. Yeah, so this was just the introduction. Right, this is the simplest scenario ever. One event, one topic, one handler, one service. Cool. Then on to something more interesting. We introduce a CRM service. So let's say we have a CRM software, like a paid tool that we want to add our users to. So our, let's say, sales team can contact them or whatever. Yeah. So in this case, I do the same thing, and the user sign up event gets delivered to both services at once. So this is what you would expect, right? So when a user signs up, they get added to the newsletter service, but also to the CRM service. Not really at the same time, right? It's not synchronized, but you get the idea. The point is the event gets somehow duplicated, you could say, because we publish a single one and it gets delivered to both services.
And they both have different consumer group.
Not yet. No consumer groups at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now there are no consumer groups. This is just like this is what you would call a fan out behavior, right? On some queues, this is a common approach. You just we publish a message and it gets delivered to every consumer there is. So this is what happens here. And the code is exactly the same for the first service, and for CRM service, it's almost the same. It just does different things. So logs different message, but nothing different in configuration. So this is still not super interesting. And then when it gets more interesting, it's, let's say we want to scale the newsletter service. So we add more replicas of it. So it's the same code, exact same binary event running on a different, like a few different servers or a few different containers. Doesn't really matter. It's just a few subscribers that do the same thing. The code didn't change. This is exactly the same thing as before. And we have two newsletter services, each with on a user signed up handler, right? What happens now, instead of publishing events, is what the same thing as happened with the CRM service in the second example, right? So we publish an event once, but both services receive it. So this is not really what we want, because if we scale the service horizontally, it's either for performance reasons or to avoid single point of failure. But it doesn't really make much sense to have the same event being processed twice. And of course, your handlers hopefully are ready for this, because it can happen that you receive the same event twice. So there should be some mechanism that makes it not possible to add a user twice to the newsletter. But anyway, this is not a good idea, usually. So what you want is consumer groups, and this is when we start talking about them, right? So I have the same example as before, but now each handler has a consumer group attached called newsletter service. And what happens now is what you would expect. So a single message gets delivered only to one service at a time. So you can see by the numbers that there's one service processes one message, but the other one gets the next message in a queue. So each event is processed only once, and it works in a round robin fashion, right? So so the handlers consume the event one after the other. And what makes it possible is the consumer group, which is just a string. Doesn't really matter how you call it. In this case, I picked the service name. And yeah, and how it works is we pass this string to the subscriber config. So in this case, this is the ready stream subscriber, and it's actually quite easy to pass in the consumer group. It's just like a string configuration in the struct. And then when I create the Watermill handler, I pass in this subscriber. So this is where the magic happens. So you can think of it as the PubSub doesn't deliver the message to each handler now, but it delivers it to the group and just chooses one of the consumers inside the group to process the message. And as I mentioned before, some PubSubs do it in different ways, but usually it will be something similar. So, for example, on RabbitMQ, you would have a single exchange, which is like a topic, and then one queue for each group. So you would have both services subscribing on the same queue, and it will be pretty much the same effect. Yeah. So let's pretend we didn't add the CRM service yet. And we have a bit different scenario now, which is one newsletter service, but we now split our release into promotion and news. Because sometimes people consent for marketing, but don't want to see news or whatever, something like that. So within the same service, we have two handlers, two Watermill handlers, and each subscribe for the same message type, so for the same topic. And for now, I kept the same customer groups we had before. So what happens now is the behavior we had previously. But in this case, we don't really want it, right? Because we want a single user to be added to both lists, or at least for both handlers to be executed. So it seems our previous approach with the service name as a group, it doesn't really work in this case. So you need to be careful about this, not to avoid this anti-pattern. Otherwise, you would miss some of the handlers executions. The code looks like this, so same as before, but we have two handlers now, and the only difference is the handler name and also the logic itself, which isn't really a logic in our case, but yeah. So how to fix it? We pick another consumer group names, in this case handler names, right? So each message gets delivered to one group at once, and since each group has only one subscriber in it, both receive the message, and it works pretty much the same, except I have two subscribers now. So this is the core thing, right? You will need one subscriber per each consumer group, which sometimes gets could generate a lot of boilerplate, but we'll come to that in a minute. But for now, it's just one subscriber per consumer group, and then each handler receives its own subscriber. So you could say the behavior is the same as we had with, in the second example, with like no consumer groups at all, and it's true. But the difference is when you consider adding replicas. So now we have those examples combined. So we take this single service with two handlers, and we spin another replica of it. And now this is where we need the consumer groups, because what happens is each group receives only one of the messages, right? So it's like a combination of both previous examples. The code stays the same. We didn't change anything. We just spin up the new replica of the same service. And this is the behavior we'd expect. So it doesn't really matter which service receives the messages. What matters is that a single event is processed by both the blue and the yellow group, right? So the user is added to both promotions and news lists, or at least the handlers are executed. Yeah. So
that's a color, for example.
Yeah.
I guess that this will be fun.
Combining everything again.
What can go wrong?
So now we add a second handler to the CRM service, right? So we have two services, each with two handlers. And what we want to do is the events should be processed by all four of them. So the CRM service now adds the user to a CRM software, and also to some kind of support software. So we expect all of them to be executed with the same event. And a little change I did here is I added service name to this consumer group. So now it's a service name underscore handler name, which in this case isn't really required, but it's a good practice, because if you use just handler name, you could run into conflicts. If another service uses the same handler name, they will make up a single consumer group, which is not what you want. In this case, it's not an issue, but if you run a lot of microservices across teams and so on, this could happen, especially if you name your handlers like on user signed up, which we tend to avoid now, because I think we did this at first, but then there was an issue because we would have two handlers within the same service subscribing for the same event name, and then you have an issue because your handler already is called on user signed up, so the other one needs to be called something different. So it's up to you really how to call them, but
yeah, I think it worked for us best, and it's also good in general to have the service name, because if you're removing service for some reason, it's just easier to understand to which service it belongs. And I guess because I don't remember if under the hood you're using SecureS component here.
Yeah.
So yeah, in SecureS component, it's pretty easy to expose the subscription name to. I mean, it's part of the handler name, as I remember.
Yeah, exactly. I will show this in a bit.
Oh, spoiler again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So just to show how it works, yeah, this is what I mentioned. So a single event gets processed by all four handlers. Just one more thing to note is that there is no replica number inside the consumer group, right? So it's not called newsletter service 1, but newsletter service. Otherwise, you would create like unique consumer group per each replica, which you don't want. And what's different about this example, as Robert mentioned,
Spoiled.
Yeah, spoiled, is we use the CQRS component of Watermill, which is a bit more complex way to do things, but it's much more simple if you have a big enough service. Sorry. So the main difference in this component is you don't pass a subscriber to it, but you pass a subscriber constructor, which is this function. Which is a function which takes a handler name as an argument. So this is actually quite useful to reduce the boilerplate, because you just create this function and define a config here. And this is the most important line. So we create a customer group out of a combination of service name and the handler name. And this is all you have to do. And the Watermill will do the rest for you. We create the handlers, we add it to the router. And this is how the handlers look like in case you didn't use the component before. So it's a struct which has a handler name, an event, and Watermill unmarshals the payload onto the event for you. You just have to cast it because it's not generic yet. And the same thing for SecureS, for the CRM service. It's pretty much the same. So this is the most important line. The rest of the configuration here is not that interesting for this example. This is just what you need to provide to make the SecureS component work.
Boring boilerplate that you can find in the documentation.
Yeah, the config is huge, but well documented. So, okay.
Definitely, it's giving a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and the last example is combining everything together, right? So we have the same scenario as before, but just to show how it will work, we add replicas of the services. So now we have two replicas of two services, each running two handlers. And as you can see, this still works. So the point is each group, each color receives the message once at a time, and it receives each message in segments. So we don't lose any messages, and they are processed once, at least once. As Robert mentioned before, exactly once delivery is not really a thing you want to do, unless in a very specific scenario. And if that's the case, check out Robert's example on the GitHub repository. Yeah, so that's it for the topic. And while we are discussing the secure component, it's a good moment to mention the next slide, which is
Event bus,
message bus or event bus. Yeah.
Message bus.
So we have a draft PR of something called message bus, which is a work in progress name. And the idea is to have something similar to secure component, but that would let you create consumer groups in a more straightforward way. Because secure component works fine for us, but it's a bit complex and does a few things at once. So if you want to do just consumer groups, it could be easier probably. So we are looking into some ways how to make it simpler. And the other thing we want to capture there is generic event types.
Yeah, finally, generics.
Yeah, I don't know why it says generic here, but yeah, so it's not customer groups, it's consumer groups, and it's not genetic, it's generic. Anyway, the point is, as you saw in the example, in the secure component handlers, you have to cast an empty interface onto a real struct, which is not so nice, and it's possible now to do it using generics. So we want to do it using the message-based component. Yeah, so if you want to take a look at the PR, it's there. It would be nice to hear feedback. And I hope this will be included in the next release of Watermill.
That will be a bit faster and we'll have a bit less release candidates.
Hopefully we don't have an RC for 3 years now. And of course, if you want to run the previous example, the consumer groups example, you can download the code. Clone the repository and run the compose app. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so those examples, they are all in Watermill repository. It's _ examples, so all of them are there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all for message bus.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so what's the next? It's the time that a lot of people ask for, and I have some data that a lot of people ask for. So I just checked the Discord, and yeah, a lot of people are asking what is happening. Our event-driven course that will be actually training, but I will say you in a few minutes why it's not course, but why it's training. So let's go, and yeah. So let's say welcome to Go Event Driven, so to our second online training. So what's the idea about Go Event Driven? So the idea is that maybe some of you know that some time ago we created Go in one evening that was more for developers that already know how to code, but it was rather basic. But it was just, I would say, beginning and some POC to check if our idea makes sense. And the second step is creating an event-driven training. And yeah, we'd like to learn you how to build scalable and developable service, design advanced event-driven systems, and how to avoid turning into legacy, and how to choose trade-offs. Because of course, as any idea in IT, each of them have trade-offs, so there are no perfect solutions. So for example, what we mentioned earlier, so you have exactly once delivered that usually you don't want to have, and if you would like to have, it's pretty expensive to have. So it's all about understanding the trade-offs, and maybe sometimes understanding that, okay, maybe event-driven system is not a solution for the problem that you have. And the idea is that for the training, we'll use the platform that we developed some time ago. So this platform were already used for Go in one evening, and it's a bit different from everything that you've seen earlier, because if you're seeing some different online courses, they're mostly videos. So they're providing some homeworks or something like that, but the core is video, and you can do homework, but you don't really need, and it's not helping you with that. Here it's different. So there are no videos, there are just practical examples, and everything is connected to working on working examples and creating projects. So our idea is that it's allowing us to create really small chunk of work. So most of exercises for our Go in one evening training had about, 2-3 minutes of work to do, so you can iterate very quickly. But thanks to creating a custom platform, we were able to create a CLI that provides you examples, that runs the code, so you don't need to have an environment locally, and you don't need to lose time on cloning some examples or whatever. So our CLI is providing you everything. And it will be also used for Go in one evening. So not for Go in one evening, for Go event driven. So in this case, it will take care about having all infrastructure like pub subs, etc. So locally, you will just need to have our CLI and to log into our website. So yeah, that's pretty low entry point, I would say. And again, it will be super practical. So if you don't like to do practical exercises, if you like watch courses online and do nothing about that, probably it will be not for you. If you like coding, because I believe, and I think Miłosz also believe that this is how we are learning. Yeah? Because I know if you're learning how to drive car, you can learn some nice theory from books how to drive car, but as long as you will not, practice it in traffic, you cannot say that you are driving the car. And this is also how we're learning all the techniques. So we have already some agenda draft. So this is something that Miłosz can probably say a bit more.
Yeah. So this is like a very rough draft of the ideas we want to include in the course, in the training. So the idea is to split it into 4 weeks. So it'll be a bit different than going one evening, because it's a much longer training with like over 40 modules. At least that's our estimate right now. So we want to cut it into 4 weeks and group it into like a few areas. Yeah. So the first week would be quite basic event-driven introduction, like starting from the theory, but also introducing Watermill and what you can do with it, and some basic considerations like what to do, how to define events, how to handle errors, how to choose the message broker. Basically, something that you want to have, like what you need to run a quite basic event-driven application. That will be the start, and then we're moving on to more advanced topics. So for example, consumer groups, which we discussed today. But everything you would need to take this simple event-driven application you had before and make it into more production grade application that handles multiple scenarios, is ready for edge cases, and so on. And then we're going into this architecture territory. So some theory about events, what worked for us for designing them, what you need to consider, what are the trade-offs, because as Robert mentioned before, there are always some. And we will wrap up with a part about operations side. So having event systems on production, monitoring them, making sure they work, like trying to understand any issues, debugging, stuff like that. and then the most advanced patterns, like Outbox pattern or Saga's process managers, and general architecture of event-driven systems from like a high level. Also mentioning some anti-patterns you should avoid, and finishing with like materials to learn later. So that this is a very early agenda, but that will be mostly the scope we want to capture in the training. And of course, it can change slightly. We can move it around over time, but should give you a good idea how it will work, like what would be inside.
All right, so the idea is that like that. So today we already started the pre-sale, and our idea is to finish the content before end of June. So now we are opening the pre-sale, and the next opportunity to buy that will be earliest in the September, but yeah, we'll see how it will go. So if you will not buy now, so you will need to wait a while for that. Plus, we're also planning to increase price for that time. So we wanted to ensure that, okay, if you're already buying in a pre-sale, so you will have the best price, and we're not planning. So, for example, for Go in one evening, we're doing Black Friday, for example, but he will be not doing that. So if you are buying now, so you know that you're buying at the best price, and you will never ever be able to buy it in a better price. And the idea is that we also would like to ensure that we're working on something meaningful. So our goal is to sell at least 50 trainings. So this is some kind of baseline for us, that to know that, okay, at least 50 people are interested in that, and okay, it makes sense to work on that. If not, okay, no offense, we are just returning money for all orders, and yeah, we are thinking about our life.
Yeah, basically we could work on another trading if it's more more popular, more people would buy it. So we just want to know where to spend our time.
Exactly. So the idea is that for the pre-sale, the price that we set is $200, and if you compare it, for example, to one going on evening that was 40, so you can see the difference that that was one evening, and this is 4 weeks. So the time span is much bigger, and it's also much more material. So we believe that this is a fair price, especially that Go in one evening we sold almost 500. So it's pretty a lot. But the good news is also that if you are from a low-income country, so you'll also see a bit different, a bit smaller price. So a lot of people were asking us about that okay, they are from countries then their income is a bit smaller. So for all of you, when you visit the event-driven landing page, so you'll see the lower prices. There's one but: if you buy with this discount, you'll be able to use this training only with the country where you bought that. So this is some trade-off, but of course it kind of makes sense because we all know how VPN works. So yeah, as I said, so it will be the lowest price ever. And yeah, the idea is that we are also providing very flexible return policy. So we know that it's also big. So if you are deciding to buy it now, so it's super big trust from your side. So wanted to ensure that you are getting this training as first person. So it will be not available for the rest. So as I said, so before summer, we would like to finish the content, but we're not releasing it instantly to the rest of the people. So you'll be really the first person that can check that. And again, the price is pretty good. We don't know yet how much we'll increase it on September, but I'm pretty sure that will. And you can refund it at any time during the production of the training, plus 2 weeks after release the first. In the middle of the training, you can still return that. So if you say that, okay, it was nice, but I know I'm returning everything that I'm buying. Okay, it's not a problem. You don't need to provide any reason for that. You can just return, and no offense from our side. So yeah, this is the link. So it's 3.tech/event-driven. So you can check more details about that training here. And again, it's super hands-on. So you'll go over so you'll implement in the real project all the points that Miłosz already mentioned. So if you feel that it's not for you to write a lot of code, you may not like that. But if it's the opposite, you will probably like that. Especially that we already have super nice feedback for people that were doing Go in one evening, but you can check a bit more on the landing page. Yeah, so this is Go in one evening. If you are interested to see how the platform works, so first, I don't know how many modules of Go in one evening are free. Couple modules of Go in one evening. Yeah. So
you can sign up and just download the CLI, see if you like it, the format. And as Robert mentioned, we had very good feedback from people using it. So we know the format works, and we want to do it for event-driven as well. But you can see if it works for you. Like if you prefer to watch videos, it might not be your thing.
Or if you don't know, again, you have pretty long time for decide if you like that or not, and to return no offense. Then that's the idea. All right, so Q&A time. So it's time to ask questions from your side. So this is almost the last point. So after Q&A, we'll do the quiz. So, Gopher is waiting. But before that, questions. Okay, so when you're Dima asked how it works when it's bought for a company. So you need one license for one person. So this is how it works, because when somebody is progressing in training, so it's not possible to go back in this way with the project and all the stuff. So it's important. The good thing is that if probably component, because probably no normal person will buy 10 trainings. But if the company will buy more than 10 trainings, we are also giving some discount. So please contact us in that case. I also forgot to mention about one thing. Actually, we don't need to sell 50 because there are just 49 to sell. And it's actually sold before training, so before live. So somebody already found the landing, even if we're not really announcing it anywhere. So yeah, it's counting down. It's 49 to go. So Dima, I hope that it makes sense. So yeah, every person that would like to participate needs a separate license.
Yeah, and Fernando asked about Argentina. So I think it is included in PPP, and you will see it when you visit the landing. There will be a switch that lets you see the discount.
Oh, spoiler alert! It's not 49 already. So yeah, probably we can be a bit optimistic on doing that, but let's see. I mean, we're not doing it that much earlier. So yeah. And about Argentina, I'm 100% sure that Argentina is one of those countries. I remember that I was even checking Argentina if it works. Can you paste Miłosz?
Yeah. The new one, the old one. So when can we start the course? We aim to have it ready by before the end of June. So perhaps sometime in June will be the first modules out. So the point is, this will be ready only for people who bought on the pre-sale, and the regular sale would happen sometime in September.
Or maybe later if we'll be lazy after that.
Yeah. So there is no content available now. I mean, we are working on it, but it's not out. We plan to do it in June, and it will come out in the format of like weeks. So on the first week you would receive about 10 modules. The second week, the next 10 modules, and so on. So you have more time to ingest, do the exercises. There will be a Discord group for discussions between attendees. So that's the idea.
Yeah, some people bought, but well, so I think we'll share the numbers when we'll have a bit more. But yeah, I can say that already a couple people bought that. By the way, if you have also some friends that may be interested in that, I mean, it's still not sure that we'll have this 50. It's still kind of a lot. We are trying to do our best, but we are probably as good marketers as front-end developers. So we are not good front-end developers. No offense, Miłosz, but
I am proud of my Bootstrap examples.
Yeah, Bootstrap is. I think Bootstrap is best thing invented for backend developers ever. So
yeah, actually, we have some of those laptop stickers to give out, I guess.
yeah,
So maybe we could.
Yes. Okay. So when we'll be doing quiz, so okay, we can say that there is Gopher to win. We can also add some 2 stickers maybe to him. So okay, the second and third place will also get stickers.
Yeah,
Sounds fair. Yeah, I really like those stickers. When I was on FOSDEM after the presentation, I said that I will be giving away some of them, and I was like crowded for by many people. I think I give out, I don't know, 100 or 200 of them. So yeah, I hope that they're now in some laptops.
So Christian asked about demo lessons. We have one module which is kind of ready, but I don't think it's ready to share. But I think we could do something maybe like that.
So I would say that probably, I mean, you can always return. So well, I still know that, okay, it requires some trust, but I will encourage to, okay, if you think that it may be good, and for example, you can check the platform, you go in one evening, so you can try to buy, and again, you have 2 weeks to return that after we'll start. So it's also, some, I would say, motivation for us to ensure that, because, actually, half time of the course you can return that, so we really need to do a good job to ensure that it's the highest quality content. That's what we are trying always to do, yeah. So on our blog or Watermill, all the stuff. So I will not expect that it will be worse, but again, it's still our flexible policy of returns. Okay, I see that somebody found the Gophers.
Right. So yeah, if you want to check what the content would look like, you can see going on evening to have an idea how the platform looks like with short exercises, condensed theory, and you can then take a look at our blog where we share more advanced concepts, and like those things together make up the new training. So more advanced topics, but in a format of exercises you can do.
All right, some more questions, or we'll be starting quiz soon. Gopher is waiting.
So Woody Monk asks if your background in electronics is good enough for learning. I guess if you know Go, and if you work with event-driven services in Go, the training would be a good idea. It should help you.
And if you don't know Go yet, go in on evening.
I mean, we don't use any, I think, computer science theory.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we don't have a computer science degrees.
University was boring.
So and it's the whole idea of the training is that it should be practical. There is some theory, but it's very condensed, only what you need. So you don't really need any theoretical background.
Yeah, this is how also we were learning. I mean, we're coding for pretty long time, and we weren't learning it at school. So we're learning that by creating real projects, and our high-level idea is to reproduce this experience of learning, but within the platform, because we know that usually the problem is, for example, finding some good examples and pulling it together or whatever. So we're trying to simplify that. So we have the boundaries of what project we would like to do and create during this course. We're creating some smaller exercises because it's not only the projects, it's also some really small exercises, like you have some code and you're doing just some small change to make it working better, and later you can move it to the project. And this is exactly how we're learning again. So we are trying to reproduce that.
Yeah, I think one thing we didn't mention is the projects, right? So the training consists of exercises, but there's also probably one bigger project that you add things over time. So so you learn some theory, you do a short exercise about this theory, and then you have an opportunity to add this to a bigger project, which should reflect what Robert mentioned about building a real application from scratch. Because we want to make the exercises as much about real life examples as we can, and you can already see it in Going One Evening, and we had very good feedback about this. So so we don't want to have very abstract examples that you won't see anywhere, but instead at least parts of bigger applications that would actually look like what you would be running in production. That's the idea.
Yeah, probably a lot of you already seen examples like, I don't know, model coffee making machine. It's nice, but usually this is not something that you're making. Yeah. So we have some idea for a project. No spoilers yet. I will not spoil that in that time, but I think it will be a pretty interesting one, and I would actually be happy to work on such project. And yeah, the idea is that after finishing that, it should be production grade, and it can, almost can be deployed. So.
And the key thing is it won't be a trivial one, because it's also the same for like DDD examples. That's why we created the wild workouts example before, because there are some DDD examples out there, but they often are about trivial domains like to-do apps or notes-taking software or something like that, which is, we don't really need those complex patterns to create a software like this. It could be just like a CRUD or whatever. So we want to really find those complex domains where the event-driven patterns actually make sense.
Yeah. Also, we have some strange luck with Miłosz to work on some strange domains like financial, security, or health, or I don't know. We already had some startups that were doing earlier. We did really strange things in our life, so we have a lot of strange examples to use. But yeah, we also heard about some nice examples. So yeah. This is what I think will also work nicely with some, maybe not domain-driven design, but some lightweight, I would say, modeling related to that. Because I think this is also a pretty important part. Because I like to say that 5 days of coding can save 1 day of planning. So this is something like that. You can do something super complex, but just thinking about that a bit longer and planning how to do that, it can simplify stuff. So it's also about pragmatism and understanding trade-offs. As I said at the beginning, it's all about trade-offs at the end. So yeah.
All right. So the difference between individual and company subscription is you get an invoice for the company one.
Yeah. So background is that Stripe charges us for issuing invoice 0.4%. So that's why you have 2 buttons to choose between.
That's the difference. So if you want to have an invoice, and you can add your tax ID there, have a proper invoice generated.
So Grzegorz asks, Summer, do you have a date in mind? So not exact date. So, creating a training is a bit like every IT project. So we could put some date, but it can, So this is more or less what month we said?
June.
Yeah,
we
July,
plan to do it in June, and ideally before the end of June. So so we can have it completed sometime in July.
Yeah,
basically before summer, right? Before you take off to your vacation and won't have to think about IT.
So
that's what we aim at. Yeah, and I guess as Robert mentioned, as with all IT projects, we will either need to cut scope or move the deadline. But
yeah, but
for now, that's the idea.
Yeah, but the idea is that the last thing that we would like to do is cutting scope and quality. I mean, because it's always super important to us to really be sure that, okay, if you're giving you something and you're paying money for that, so it's top quality. So yeah, that's the idea.
So yeah, we plan to have sagas as part of the training in the last chapters in the last week. This is one of the most complex patterns.
Or misused.
Yeah. If you really need to use it, then yeah.
First rule of using sagas, don't use that. If you need to use sagas, think it twice.
But for completeness, we want to include them. So yeah.
Yeah, but what we'll also try to do, so to include some patterns, help you to think if you can avoid sagas. I mean, those sagas should be the last resort, and from my experience, it's usually they're introduced because something is modeled improperly in other services. I mean, sometimes, for example, something shouldn't be two services, but should be one service, and you will not need to have distributed transaction. And but again, it's not always possible. But from my experience, it was really often the case that it was just modeled improperly. But I agree that sometimes it happens, and sometimes you need to use the last resort of your event-driven tooling, that is Saga.
Yeah, what do we work on also the Watermill? Yeah, trainings last year. So yeah, I think last year was mostly going one evening for us releasing it, and then improving based on the feedback, then preparing the platform for event-driven training because it's a bit more advanced. For example, you will have pub subs there, like real pub subs you can use, and we still want it to work the same way. So you just run the CLI, and it does everything for you to confirm your solution works. So you don't have to set up anything on your computer. You don't really need Go if you don't want to. Like, I guess if you're interested in the training, you probably need Go anyway. But
okay, in theory, it's true. You don't need to have Go locally even.
But we will include, at least we plan to include these Docker Compose files, so you can run the same examples on your own system. That's the plan.
Is there VAT exemption supported for US countries? So if you're thinking about VAT exemption for companies, I guess. So if you're buying as a company, so yeah, I think reverse charge should work.
Yes, Stripe should handle this.
Yes, you should see it at the checkout. So I'm not 100% sure, but it should be visible at the checkout. So you're clicking the button that you're buying as a company, and you should see.
Yeah. If you notice something weird, just let us know, because our previous payment provider didn't agree to do a pre-sale with us, so
he did it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so we had to bootstrap Stripe integration fairly quickly. So
fairly.
If something is not working, just shout on Discord or wherever. Okay, I think we can move to the quiz now.
Yeah, I think so. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your questions. And okay, quiz. Boom.
Yeah.
So this guy, so you can win this guy, and second and third place. So you should visit this link already. Yes, question will be asked soon. So again, this gopher plus 2 stickers plus 2 places will have this. Second and third place will have just stickers.
Right. So you visit 3dots.tech/quiz. You will see a form, and yeah, you can start by inputting your email address. So it can be the first one. And how long should we wait?
Okay, so let everybody who would like to participate go to this form. Let me double check if we're gathering also everything there. So this is the form. You can put email address. Let me double check if answers are saved. Didn't check that actually. And you can.
Oh, so Firmino says he's asking for permissions. Good thing we checked. Thank you, Firmino.
Okay, I should fix that, I guess. Can anybody else? Oh, okay. Link. Where is? Add collaborators. Oof, it was close.
Interesting UX.
Okay.
Do you want to set to editor? I think you want to set it to viewer or something.
Or not.
Yeah, that's...
Okay, because there is anyone.
Yeah, well, something had to go wrong, right? Yeah, I think it asks you to log in anyway on like Google account.
It doesn't make sense. But why is editor?
Yeah. Can you guys tell us if you can see it right now? Yeah, I think it's fine because I've edited it right now.
Okay, guys, please confirm the chat if you need to log with Google account. Is correct?
I think so. It asked me to.
Worst case, I can create another form in Tally. Okay, so one sec, I will just create another form.
But we didn't share the question yet. Or you would need to one quickly.
Okay, I'm preparing the form. I need 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat to see if we missed any questions.
All right, so I have the new form. I will paste it on the YouTube now. It's only one question. So this is the link to the form. Please confirm if that one is working.
Yeah, I think we need to give out more stickers to compensate for this. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, did it work for you? Waiting for some confirmation.
Can you see the replays?
Hmm?
Can you see the replays?
It works. Okay. So let's wait.
Yeah, it's just an email and address.
All right. So let me remove all the previous answers.
Right. Can I kick off?
Amazing. Right. So again, this gopher.
Right. So the question is, what's the date of the first post on our blog?
Exact date.
Exact date, like day and month and year.
Okay. So now we are waiting for the answers. So the question is, what's the date of first article or our blog? The exact date. Now 100 people are visiting our blog. Blog is down.
Oh, I see we have a winner. Okay.
Okay, so we have the winner. So now we are looking for the second place who will get those stickers, and for the third place who will also get the stickers. Whoa, okay.
Right, so it's 28th February
That is
2018. And just so happens that it's 5 years ago, and we didn't plan this, but it's actually our 5th anniversary of our blog. So it's been great to celebrate it with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for the answers, and we will contact the winners.
Cool. So that's all what we had for today. Again, our new training, it's on our website. You can find the link also on our blog. So yeah, and don't forget to share with your friends. We need 50 to start working on that. If not, we need to find something better to work on. Cool. So thank you for your attention, and see you sometime later.